Good afternoon. Welcome to another exciting day of notes in biology. I know it's been a little while, so I hope you missed me. So today's topic is about cells, and just going to give you a little overview today about cells. We'll talk about basic information about cells, some history of how cells have been discovered, and talk about the different kinds of cells that we may see. Okay? Should be exciting. How do I go forward? Okay, so the first thing is real simple. What is a cell? If you look in the book, the definition of a cell is the basic unit of life. And so basically it is that unit that living organisms need to continue life, and it's the component that they're made of. So it's like bricks to a building. A building's got all these bricks that are put together. That is similar in an organism. Organisms contain cells. In fact, all living organisms contain at least one cell. And so basically, if you have one or more cells, you are considered a living organism. So there's two kinds of organisms really that we would talk about. Those being a unicellular organism, and that means an organism with one cell, or a multicellular organism which has two or more cells. Okay, so some of the history of cells in a nutshell is first starts with Anton van Leeuwenhoek, and this happened way back in the 1600s, so this is a very long time ago. Leeuwenhoek made some of the first microscopes, and you got to remember this is 400 years ago, and his microscopes predominantly consisted of what would be hand lenses today. He's got a little lens and a little hand on it, and that looks like a lollipop. But he would just make microscopes out of lenses and things. He might add light to it. He might add a candle, but they were very, very rudimentary, very old. And so he made some of the first microscopes, and he is actually credited as seeing the first cells. And what van Leeuwenhoek did is he actually went around and looked in mud puddles. And so he was actually looking in lots of weird places like mud puddles and drops of water and things like that. And he was just looking at it through his lens, and he noticed these things moving around in the water, which he called animalcules. He called them animalcules. He didn't really know what they were. He just thought they were tiny little animals that were swimming around in the water. And there were things like this amoeba over here, this euglena here, and this paramecium over here, which we now know present day are called protists, and they're a kingdom of organisms that lives in only in water environments. And so he discovered them. Again, he didn't call them cells. He didn't know what they were. He called them animalcules, but really that kind of started everything. So following Leeuwenhoek's research, other scientists were trying to extend his work. Robert Hooke is one that is credited with really furthering what we know about cells. This is Robert Hooke, about 1665, so 60 years later. Look at that, beautiful guy. Yikes! When you Google it, you get interesting pictures. At any rate, Hooke is credited with really naming cells. He was a monk, and monks lived in these tiny little chambers, and he was looking at cork, and cork is really just a part of a tree. And what he noticed in the tree was, as this picture shows right here, this is what cork looks like under a microscope. He noticed that the tiny little boxes really represented the cells that he stayed in his monastery. And so he compared them to that and called them cells. And I guess the name stuck. This is a picture of what the microscope that he was using might look like. So it's a little bit of an advancement over Leeuwenhoek's, but nothing nothing compared to what we use today. The microscopes in our class are a million times better than what they use. Ours are compound light microscopes, and they see images, hundreds and thousands of times better than what these might have seen. So, much better. And so what that leaves us with is basically we know that there's two fundamental types of cells out there. They are called prokaryotes and eukaryotes, or prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. A prokaryotic cell is part of a prokaryotic organism, and a eukaryotic cell is part of a eukaryotic organism. Okay? You can see there's some drastic differences between them. First of all, in terms of their age, and age of discovery, I should say, the prokaryotes are much older. Prokaryotes really are bacteria. And in terms of Earth and things, bacteria have been around longer than animal cells and plant cells. So they're older, probably by about 1 billion years. And that number is debatable, and it's not really worth arguing. So they're older. Okay. The eukaryotic cells are predominantly plant and animal cells. And so this might look like the cells that we're studying in class, and you can see the different organelles that are inside them. Okay, so these are newer. Again, by approximately 1 billion years, give or take. Okay, size-wise, you can see there's a huge difference in the size of them. The eukaryotic cell is much larger than the prokaryotic cell. Okay, it's much larger and it's much more complex. Okay, as you can see, it's got all these different things going on inside of it, whereas this has much less. Okay, in terms of the organelles, the prokaryotic organism has some organelles, but it would certainly have less. And the predominant difference being that has no true nucleus. Okay, so the prokaryotic organism basically has free-floating DNA in it, and so the DNA is just floating around inside here, whereas in the eukaryotic organism, it has a nucleus, and it has that nucleolus and everything inside it, and so inside the nucleus is the DNA, right? And so that's inside there, but it's not free-floating around in the cell, whereas in the bacteria it is. So that's a huge difference. So, in summary, whatever. Okay, so talked a lot about living organisms, and what does that mean? What does it mean to be a living organism? And so really there's a whole checklist of characteristics that are needed for an organism to be considered a living organism. They are heredity, homeostasis, reproduction, response to stimuli, cellular organization, evolution, metabolism, and growth and development.